Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Spinnaker Croft mid-size limited edition Granite. This watch is available from spinnakerwatches.co.uk for £350. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So the watch comes in a watch box which is protected by this cardboard outer sleeve which one removes. This is the watch box itself, as you can see, finished to a high standard, beautifully executed. One removes the lid and the watch sits on a foam block inside the base, and it's a good tight snug fit, so it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping. With regards to the items one gets with the watch comes with this wallet which has 3 items inside. On the left hand side we have the owner's instruction manual, clear concise diagrams, and the instructions are in English. In the centre section we have this certificate confirming that this Croft mid-size is a limited edition, and this is number 1 of 1,000 pieces. On the right hand side we have the warranty card, and I'm pleased to report that this Croft limited edition is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very reassuring. And lastly, one also gets this Spinnaker tag. It's always a nice touch to get a tag included with a watch. So with regards to the specifications of the piece, this is the Spinnaker Croft mid-size limited edition Granite. 40mm case diameter, 46.8mm lug-to-lug measurement. We have a thickness of 14.1mm, and we have a lug width of 20mm. The oyster style bracelet tapers from 20mm at the lugs down to the 2-button push flip lock clasp, and as you can see, the flip lock is signed to a high standard with Spinnaker. Good foam resistance to the 2-button push triggers. Now, as always, I'm going to level criticism at Spinnaker. I would like to see them elongate the 2-button push flip lock clasp and add an extra micro adjustment hole, because it only has 3 micro adjustment holes, and it would be better with 4 to allow for more fine tuning of the bracelet length. We have a sapphire crystal with blue tinted AR coating. Nice blue hue to the anti-reflective coating when I tilt it at an oblique angle, as you can see. And the AR coating does an excellent job of reducing the glare and the highly reflective nature of the gilded applied indices and gilded skeletonized hands. I like the use of a gilded applied Spinnaker logo at 12 o'clock. It does add interest and it gives the watch a luxurious feel. One of my favourite aspects to this Croft limited edition is the use of a transparent dial. As you can see, it's see-through, and one can see through the dial to the bridges of the movement, and as it's the Seiko NH70, the bridges are skeletonized, so it's very interesting to look at the movement through the transparent dial. 120 click unidirectional bezel, solid 316L grade stainless steel, and it's knurled finish, as you can see. Low profile, which gives it a vintage aesthetic, and the quality of the brush satin finishing to the knurling is absolutely gorgeous. It's a beautifully executed solid 316L grade stainless steel bezel. Now, the bezel insert is matte and it does look like ceramic, but it's actually made from aluminium. Interesting choice to use aluminium because the bezel insert is fully loomed with C3 superluminova, both on the hour markers and the large Arabic numerals. Recessed red triangle at 12 o'clock surrounds the loom pip, so it gives it a vintage aesthetic, and it is an absolutely beautiful aluminium bezel insert to look at. So let's test the bezel action. Now, very firm resistance to this. It feels similar to a Steinhardt Ocean 139, if you're familiar with that. The resistance is firm, but it's even all the way through the 360 degrees of rotation. I would describe it as firmer than a Seiko SKX 007, or alternatively Seiko Turtle, if you're familiar with those. So it does feel good. It's nice, loud, audible clicks, but it does take a lot of torsion to rotate it. And I really like it. I like the feeling of it. Now, let's test the action. No lateral side-to-side play, no back play whatsoever. So I'm just going to cycle through 360 degrees of rotation again. It's difficult to get a grip of it because it's low profile with a fine knurling to it. I'm just going to take off my glove to get better purchase on it with my index finger and thumb, because I really want to test this bezel action thoroughly. It's very firm, but I like the feeling of it being firm. Yes, it's much easier to grip without a glove on and rotate it. I just want to check the alignment is perfect, so just bear with me. One more click. Perfect. So the loom pip and triangle aligns correctly with the double applied indices as one would expect. So very well executed bezel despite it being very firm. So just bear that in mind, it's something to consider. It's got firmer resistance than a Steinhardt Ocean 139 and I would say firmer resistance than a Seiko Bezel Action. But the positive of that is it's not accidentally going to be knocked out of position, and I would prefer to have a tight bezel action with no lateral side-side play, no back play and perfect alignment, rather than a loose and sloppy bezel action as per Pagani design, for example. With regards to the crown, it's solid 316L grade stainless steel, knurled finish to it, signed with the Spinnaker brand emblem as one would expect, mirror polished to a high standard. Let's test the action. Absolutely silky smooth. Good firm resistance to the threading, but the threading is silky smooth and I like that feeling of it being firm. It gives a feeling of quality. The Seiko NH70 has a characteristic pop, as do all NH series movements such as the NH35A and the NH38, and that pushes the winding stem out of the movement into the first position, which is the manual wind position. So I can manually wind the movement to top up the NH70 to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. Absolute pleasure to feel the tension building up in the mainspring to its maximum 40 hours. Now the NH70 doesn't have a date complication, as you can see there's no date wheel, so pulling it out to the first click is the final click position, and that is the time setting position. Good firm resistance to the gearing, absolute pleasure to set the time, and the NH70, like all NH series movements, has hacking, so as you can see I have now hacked the second hand, which has a contrasting red tip to it. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to sweep around the dial once again. So I'll just test screwing it back down. Immediate pickup, so perfect interface between the internal thread of the solid stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. Spinnaker deserve full credit because this is a very tight but smooth, well executed screw down crown which provides an effective hermetic seal to 150 meters. So I really like the crown action and I like the firm bezel action. They both give a feeling of quality. Let's look at the case back. Screw down exhibition case back, glazed with sapphire crystal, brush satin finishing, concentric finishing to the brush satin finishing, and I absolutely love the milled slots. Engraved to a high standard with a specification, and as this is a limited edition piece, the limited edition serial number of the piece 0001 of 1000 is also engraved. So every Spinnaker limited edition has the serial number engraved into the screw down case back. They've decorated the rotor on the NH70 with Spinnaker, as you can see it's signed, and that does add interest to an otherwise undecorated movement. So it's more interesting to look at from the front because the bridges are fully skeletonized, as you can see, but on the reverse it looks similar to other NH series movements such as the NH35A and the NH38. So it is a very nice movement, good, solid, reliable, well-proven workhorse movement, and I like the NH70. It's a good choice because there's no date complication and therefore it doesn't have any phantom date position when pulling it out. There isn't a click which is negligible. Underside of the case is mirror polished to a flawless finish, and the female pivoted end links are a good tight fit to the case. The 2-button push flip block clasp is signed to a high standard, as you can see. Solid milled 316L grade stainless steel, brush satin finish to the top side, underside and flanks. Very aesthetically pleasing. So I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now the bracelet on this watch does come very long, so I have sized the bracelet for this review. I've removed one full link and I've also adjusted the micro adjustment to the middle position of 3. And as you'll know from my previous reviews, I like to size my watches loose, and I can easily fit an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times, even with one link removed. So no worries whatsoever. If you have a 7 to 8 inch wrist, this will fit you no problem whatsoever. The female pivoted end links are one of my favourite features because they pull the case down to the wrist, plenty of extra articulation on the end link, and they work much better for collectors with a smaller wrist because they pull the case down and they also articulate the end link to give a snug fit. The feel good factor and the comfort level of this Spinnaker is absolutely outstanding. Very comfortable piece, very well balanced. 153 grams, and as you'll know from my previous reviews, I consider circa 150 grams for a 40mm piece to be the sweet spot for comfort, but also to have a feeling of heft and wrist presence. So 153 is the perfect weight. It's got a rather short lug to lug measurement of 46.8. I regard 48 to be perfection. 46.8 is a bit shorter, and really that suits collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches better than collectors with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches. Now the thing to note is it's a relatively tall piece for a 40mm because it's 14.1mm, and bear in mind it has a flat sapphire crystal rather than a double dome sapphire crystal, so it does sit quite tall on the wrist, and for that reason it's going to be more difficult to slip underneath a shirt cuff if you wear business shirts. So bear in mind, although it's 40mm and the lugs do taper very well, it is a tall piece on wrist. The 20mm bracelet perfectly balances the 40mm head of the piece, and I like the large mirror polished chamfers to the edge of the case, beautifully finished, so absolutely gorgeous to look at. And the bracelet has a nice luster to the 316L grade stainless steel, which is brush satin finish. So comfortable piece to wear, well balanced, and it's comfortable to wear for long periods of time due to the flat sapphire crystal in the screw down exhibition case back. It fits very snugly and flat to the wrist. So I really like the feeling of wearing it and the feel good factor. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. Fully loomed C3 Superluminova on the aluminium bezel insert. Although the hands are skeletonized, they still have plenty of C3 Superluminova loom plots, and I like the symmetry of the dial. The absence of the date complication with the Seiko N870 means there is perfect symmetry to the applied gilded indices. So the loom is glowing brightly, and it's continuing to glow for a good length of time, and it's good to see that Spinnaker haven't cut any corners with regards to the performance of the C3 Superluminova. So very well executed, clearly legible, good orientation, and I like the use of a fully loomed aluminium bezel insert. So let's discuss the movement used, because it's rather unusual at this price point to have an NH70 rather than the NH35A or alternatively NH38. So the NH38 is the no-date version of the NH35A, and we're all familiar with the NH35A. It's a very popular movement for Chinese brands and also micro brands. So it was a surprise to me when I saw that Spinnaker were using the NH70 rather than the NH38, which is the no-date version of the NH35A. The NH70, the architecture of it is similar to all NH series movements, the NH35A and the NH38 respectively. The main difference is if you look at the bridges to the movement, the NH70 is fully skeletonized, so all the bridges to the movement, as you can see, are skeletonized. One can see through the movement. If you look at the balance wheel, you can see through it to the back. If I hold my glove behind it, actually if I hold it up to the lights, you'll be able to see through it. Let's look at it from the back. So there you can see the balance wheel, you can actually see all the way through it. So it's an interesting movement, the NH70. Now, with regards to the specification of it, it's 24 joules. It runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. 40-hour power reserve is perfectly acceptable, has hand winding and hacking, and the stated accuracy is the same as the NH35A. It's -20 to +40 seconds per day. So a rather wide accuracy range, but however, I'm pleased to report that this one is very well regulated and it's running consistently at +5 seconds per day when it's fully wound to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. So it's a very reliable, well-proven workhorse movement and also very well regulated by Spinnaker to +5 seconds per day. So I think it's a good choice, and as I've said, it's very unusual to get an NH70 as opposed to an NH35A or NH38 used at this price point of £350. They deserve full credit for taking the more expensive option of the NH70 rather than the less expensive option of the NH38. So lastly, I'll summarise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So £350 is the price point of this piece. Yes, I consider it to be excellent quality, and yes, I consider it to be excellent value at £350. To get a Seiko N870, which is regulated to plus 5 seconds per day, is reason alone to purchase this watch. It's an outstanding movement. I like the use of C3 superluminova throughout, including the fully loomed aluminium bezel insert. Blue tinted AR coating, firm but very well executed bezel action, firm but well executed screw down crown. So really the build quality, the quality control and the finishing throughout of the head of the piece and the bracelets are all outstanding. Spinnaker deserve full credit for producing a very well executed piece, and one also has the added interest that this is a limited edition piece, one of 1,000 pieces. So I think it's a great watch and I'm going to highly recommend it to you for your consideration. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Spinnaker Croft mid-size limited edition Granite. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.